There are 26 new blue spells from Magic the Gathering's Foundations set. I just went over white, I'm going through all of the colors, and let's start today with the commons. Elementalist Adept is a 1 and a blue creature human wizard with flash and prowess, and it's a 2/1. Having both of these keywords on a creature is pretty neat, because I see flash and I think control, I see prowess and I think aggro. I think the most likely scenario for this creature is going to be as a defender in a deck that's playing at instant speed. Are your opponents really going to attack you when you have this prowess creature on the battlefield and you have a bunch of open mana? It's hard to say. In any case, that's a narrow set of decks, and those decks can do more powerful things, so I'm going to start this one off as Jank. Strix Lookout is a 1 and a blue creature bird with flying and vigilance. For 1 and a blue, you can tap it to draw a card, then discard a card, and it's a 1/2. It's hard not to think of Baleful Strix when seeing the Strix Lookout, and this isn't as good as that card, but this isn't without utility. The 2 mana ability helps you filter through your deck, it helps you set up a reanimation target if you're in that strategy, so I like that part of the creature, and having a flying creature generally is pretty good as a defense against those kinds of strategies. All in all, it's not all that powerful, but the looting ability is helpful, it being a flyer is helpful, the bird type is relevant. I'm gonna put this in Jank. Erudite Wizard is a 2 and a blue creature human wizard. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and it's a 2/3. It's not the most challenging to draw 2 cards on your turn, which would trigger this wizard, but drawing 2 cards on every turn is a tougher hill to climb. And the truth of the matter is if you're drawing 2 cards every turn, you probably have better things to be doing than having this Erudite Wizard grow with counters. I'm gonna put this as a hard no. Refute is a 1 and 2 blue instant counter target spell, draw a card, then discard a card. Counters that are over 2 mana usually need a pretty big upside to make the cut in your 99. This is only 1 mana more, and letting you see another card in your library can't be discounted. This can help set up your reanimation or delirium. It has synergies with madness or drawing card effects. I think this does enough to make it a fringe pick. Starlight Snare is a 2 and a blue enchantment aura. Enchant creature. When this aura enters, tap enchanted creature. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. This is too high costed to target only creatures, and creatures are doing so many more things than just attacking and blocking these days. It has to deal with abilities too, which this doesn't. I'm gonna put this as a hard no. Big Fin Bouncer is a 3 and a blue creature shark pirate. When this creature enters, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand, and it's a 3/2. If you're doing crime stuff, this is a pretty thematic choice. I think this is a decent interaction spell in a pirate deck, and it's really going to cause your opponents headaches if you include this in a blank deck. For those reasons, this is going to land in Jank. Uncharted Voyage is a 3 and a blue instant. Target creature's owner puts it on their choice of the top or bottom of their library, Surveil 1. This is too expensive for what the spell does, even if you have a Surveil theme. I'm not really going to think too much more about this. This is a hard no. Icewind Elemental is a 4 and a blue creature elemental with flying. When this creature enters, draw a card, then discard a card, and it's a 3/4. This feels like it'll make the cut in a limited deck more often than not, but I don't really see it having a place in Commander. I'm gonna place this as a hard no. The first uncommon we have is the Mischievous Mystic. It's a 1 and a blue creature human wizard with flying. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying, and it's a 2/1. Like I said before, drawing 2 cards during 1 turn in a rotation is not that hard to do, and a 1/1 fairy is a pretty good reward. This will be best served in a deck that leans on the flying mechanic, but I can see it fitting in wizard decks, I can see it fitting in fairy decks, maybe not so much humans, but I do like this creature in a lot of those lists. I'm gonna put this as Fringe. Cephalid Ink Mage is a 2 and a blue creature octopus wizard. When this creature enters, surveil 3. Threshold, this creature can't be blocked as long as there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, and it's a 2/2. The surveil 3 looks pretty deep into your library, and for that alone, I'm a pretty big fan of this. If you're doing graveyard stuff, surveil stuff, if you're manipulating the top of your library, I wouldn't overlook this creature. The threshold is a marginal ability, maybe the 2 points of damage will matter, but really, this does its job when it enters the battlefield and it can block to let you save yourself some life. I'm going to put this in Fringe. Faebloom Trick is a 2 and a blue instant. Create 2 1/1 blue fairy creature tokens with flying. When you do, tap target creature an opponent controls. This is really not the best piece of interaction, but you do get 2 fairies out of the deal. I think if you're doing fairy stuff, this seems pretty appropriate for those decks, but I'm not the biggest fan. I'm going to throw this in Jank. Inspiration from Beyond is a 2 and a blue sorcery. Mill 3 cards, then return an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. Flashback, 5 and 2 blue. This is a pretty decent rate for this ability, and having the flashback is pretty nice. This will be best in decks that have a really impactful few instants or sorceries and tutors to find them initially. If your deck isn't engaging in a strategy like that, you don't really have to worry about this card. I'm going to put this in Jank. Rune Sealed Wall is a 2 and a blue artifact creature wall with Defender, and it can tap to surveil 1. It's a 0/6. That's a pretty big butt, and I like what I'm seeing. Mostly I'm saying that because I'm brewing a Mirko Obsessive Theorist deck that's all 0 power creatures, and having a surveil trigger on a 0 power creature is pretty cool. In any case, this is going to be pretty nice in your Defender decks, in your wall decks. Surveiling, I keep saying because it comes up so often these days, is a pretty neat mechanic. I'm going to put this as Fringe. Take a second right here and right now to make a stranger's day and subscribe to the channel. As a trade, you'll get access to all of this Commander content with a usual bend towards budget Commander. Slinquint Sky Mage is a 3 and a blue creature bird wizard with flying. Whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and it's a 1/1. This is a nice reward for doing something you would normally do in a game, like draw a card on your draw step, and ideally more frequently than that. The 1 toughness is pretty scary to start out with, but if you are able to untap with it, this can grow really quickly and become a huge problem for the table. Most decks are trying to draw cards. It's going to be really good in the decks that are focused on that, but I think it'll be generally solid elsewhere as well. I'm going to put this as nice. Arcane Epiphany is a 3 and 2 blue instant. This spell costs 1 less to cast if you control a wizard. Draw 3 cards. It just so happened that Sky Mage is a wizard, so this would only cost the 4 mana, boosting that into a 4/4 evasive flyer. So you're starting to see some of the synergies in the limited Foundations format. For Commander, a 5 mana draw 3 is a decent rate. If you're in a wizard deck where you can make that 4 mana, I like it a whole lot. I'm going to put this as a Fringe card. Skyship Buccaneer is a 3 and 2 blue creature human pirate. It has flying and raid. When this creature enters, if you attacked this turn, draw a card, and it's a 4/3. A 4 power flyer in blue is pretty solid. Both humans and pirates are well known for attacking, so more often than not, you're probably going to be triggering that raid ability, drawing you that card. Now, is that the most powerful thing you can be doing in Commander? Probably not, but it's doing enough in these decks to at least be considered. I'm going to throw this in Jank. Grappling Kraken is a 4 and 2 blue creature Kraken. The landfall trigger says, whenever a land you control enters, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. It's a 5/6. This is among the most toxic landfall triggers that I've seen. I think it's pretty funny, but when my creatures are getting tapped, I doubt I'll feel the same way. I think this is a solid play in those landfall decks to save you from that aggression, and a decent enough choice in other decks to save yourself a little bit of trouble as you normally play out your lands. I'm going to put this one in the Fringe category. Drake Hatcher is a 1 and a blue creature human wizard with vigilance and prowess. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, put that many incubation counters on it. Remove 3 incubation counters from this creature, create a 2/2 blue Drake creature token with flying, and it's a 1/3. Without any support, this is a little bit slow, and the lack of evasion kind of makes me worried for it actually dealing combat damage to players. The reward is pretty nice if you are able to make this creature work though. Getting flying creatures on the board is pretty nice. These do come as incubation counters, so you can proliferate them. Overall, I think this does enough to make the cut in a few decks. I'm gonna put this as Fringe. Kiora the Rising Tide is a 2 and a blue legendary creature, Merfolk Noble. When Kiora enters, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. Threshold: whenever Kiora attacks, if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you may create Scion of the Deep, a legendary 8/8 blue octopus creature token, and it's a 3/2. The enters trigger is pretty awesome, letting you see more cards in your deck, and that threshold trigger is sweet. You can get to 7 cards in your graveyard pretty quickly, and Kiora only has to attack to spawn that 8/8. That's a really big body to get onto the battlefield, hopefully early on in the game. If you're able to loop Kiora, getting those draw 2 discard 2s over and over and over again, that makes it even better. I really like this spell. I think it's doing a lot. It can go in plenty of blue decks. This is nice. Lunar Insight is a 2 and a blue sorcery. Draw a card for each different mana value among non-land permanents you control. The magic number for this spell is 3 non-land permanents that have a different mana value, so you're outperforming the divinations of the world. If I'm in a tokens deck with blue, I'm taking a pretty close look at this card. The reason for that is those tokens check off the 0 mana value box, your commander checks off a different mana value box, and you need one other non-land permanent to check off the last box to get the value you're looking for as a floor with this card. I'm also taking a close look at this in my non-creature based decks. Those permanents are less likely to be interacted with than creatures in my experience, so you're less likely to have this be a dead card in your hand. And it's worth noting, this very well could be a 3 mana draw 0 spell, which would be a nightmare. Piggybacking on that, it could also be a 3 mana draw 8 if you do the right deck building to make this work to its maximum, and that's really cool. This is a casual commander channel, and my categorization here is going to reflect that. I'm putting this in the nice category because I love the risk-reward aspect of this, and the upside is really sweet. High Fate Trickster is a 3 and a blue creature fairy wizard with flash and flying. You may cast spells as though they had flash, and it's a 4/2. This card's printing is the funeral for the Vidalcan Orrery. RIP to a classic. Letting you cast all of your spells with flash is a pretty big deal. Having it attached to a 4-power flyer is pretty impressive as well. I really like the sequencing you can do of flashing this out and following it up with another spell that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to cast. That's really neat for me. I'm going to put this in the nice category. Homunculus Horde is a 3 and a blue creature homunculus. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a token that's a copy of this creature, and it's a 2/2. This is my favorite card of the entire set. I straight up love it, especially this printing. The other one is pretty spooky. What I need to mention, just in case you missed it, is when you copy this creature, it has the same text. So the next time you draw your second card in a turn, you'll have 4 of these, and then 8, and then 16, and on it goes. I think it's going to be really fun to flood a board with these goofy looking dudes. I'm super into it. Is it the best in a lot of decks? Not so much, but if you're drawing cards, it's a pretty good payoff and a funny one. I'm going to put this in Fringe. Archmage of Runes is a 3 and 2 blue creature giant wizard. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card, and it's a 3/6. This is the belle of the ball for every Spellslinger deck out there in blue. Having those spells cost less is awesome, and having them replace themselves by drawing that card when you cast them is equally awesome. No, it's more awesome. It's a big body, so it can't be burned out easily. The 5 mana cost is pretty heavy, so if you play this and it gets removed, that's not ideal, but this is a really strong effect. It's not really built to help decks that don't invest pretty heavily in these spell types, but it's strong enough that I'm going to put this as nice. Curator of Destinies is a 4 and 2 blue creature Sphinx. This spell can't be countered and it has flying. When this creature enters, look at the top 5 cards of your library and separate them into a face down pile and face up pile. An opponent chooses one of those piles, put that pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard, and it's a 5/5. Fact or Fiction is a totally playable spell still in plenty of decks, and having that ability, even though it's not exactly the same, stapled onto a creature is pretty big news. Bare minimum, you're looking at a probable 2 cards drawn and a 5/5 flyer on the battlefield. If you're doing flying stuff, if you're doing graveyard stuff, maybe you have a Sphinx deck, this is going to be a really nice addition in those piles. I so rarely say pile in my vernacular, but I read it so many times, it just slipped out. That's kind of funny. Anyway, this card has enough power to be a decent include in just about every blue deck, and the ones where it really matters, it's going to be really nice. I'm going to put this one as the first chase card. Kaito Cunning Infiltrator is a 1 and 2 blue legendary planeswalker Kaito. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a loyalty counter on Kaito. The +1 is up to 1 target creature you control can't be blocked this turn, draw a card, then discard a card. The -2 is create a 2/1 blue ninja creature token. The -9 is you get an emblem with whenever a player casts a spell, you create a 2/1 blue ninja creature token, and it starts with 3 loyalty counters. This is a rare planeswalker where if your board is set up correctly, you can ultimate it as soon as it enters the battlefield. If you're not able to do that though, having 2 ways to increase the loyalty, one of which is passive, is pretty sweet as well. Filtering through your deck is pretty good. If you have deal combat damage to player effects like that Dragon Trainer I was talking about earlier, this helps with those strategies. I like this card a lot. It can go in plenty of decks. This will be a chase card. Sphinx of Forgotten Lore is a 2 and 2 blue creature Sphinx with flash and flying. Whenever this creature attacks, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until the end of the turn. The flashback cost is equal to that card's mana cost. The flashback ability is nice. It's basically card advantage, and if you can get a bunch of attacks through and cast those spells out of your graveyard, you're going to be in a pretty good spot. But you do have to attack with the creature, leaving yourself without a blocker, and 3 toughness is not that hard to deal with, either with a different flyer, a burn spell, whatever the case may be. It's good that it has flash though, so you can cast it on your opponent's end step and attack with it straight away, basically. At 3 toughness, that's a little bit of a scary prospect, and I really hope the instant or sorcery in your graveyard is worth potentially losing this creature. If you do have instants and sorceries like that, having this on your battlefield to give yourself another chance at casting it is going to be pretty sweet. I'm going to put this as nice. That'll do it for blue. As you take a look at the final product, take some time right now to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Leave a comment telling me what I got dead wrong or what I got dead right if you're so inclined. Keep your eyes open for the black video coming out soon, as well as the other colors, and I'll catch you next time for some more monkeying around.